Welcome to HDTV. You're now rocking with your boy. Had the opera on you fat women. So, Paul Pierce, aka Tippin' Paul, aka Make It Rain Paul. Paul Pierce on leaving ESPN. I was done with them anyway. It wasn't a great fit. There's a lot of stuff over there that you can't say, and you have to talk about LeBron all the time. Go ahead, Paul Pierce. Go ahead, Paul Pierce. The truth. And basically, it's a Sports Illustrated article called The Moments of Truth. And it's a great read. It's very long. I'm not going to get into it. If you guys have a chance, go read that article. It's called The Moments of Truth. Now, he basically isn't sorry or not for the video at all. And the minute-long clip that made the rounds on social media, the one that cost him his job, he didn't even know he made a video. That's how toasted Paul was. So here's what happened. In April, Pierce was playing poker at a friend's house in LA. There was drinking and smoking and strippers. You know how it go. And then he decided to start an Instagram live, show off the strippers. The strippers was okay. He could have did better, but we're not going to nitpick. He got his fun off. He went there for a few minutes, and he thought a couple hundred people. When he finished, he deleted it. He didn't know IG Lives can be recorded. Unfortunately, Paul, they can. And reposted it was. Pierce went home that night thinking no one noticed. He woke up the next day and discovered everyone had. And still sorry for what? Asked Pierce. It's early July and Pierce is reclining in a straight back chair at the Spot, a hookah lounge tucked into the strip mall in Encino, California. So, hours earlier, Pierce was at home, a tailor dispatched by the Basketball Hall of Fame, taking measurements for a suit to fit Pierce, 6'7" frame. I haven't bought a new suit since I retired, says Pierce. But he needed something to wear in September for his enshrinement in Springfield, Massachusetts, 90 miles from where he spent the bulk of his 19-year NBA career. So ESPN didn't even ask for an apology. The relationship between Pierce and the network had become strained over the past 2 years. Pierce hated to travel. Network executives didn't think he was working hard enough. Like they work at all, right? And they said that the sources who told Sports Illustrated was the last straw. The industry said it after the video. He said he was done with them anyways, and Pierce between pools of lemon mint, it wasn't a great fit. There's a lot of stuff over there that you can't say, and you have to talk about LeBron all the time. So Pierce's longtime agent Jeff Swartz suggested Pierce apologize anyway. Swartz worried that the video might influence Hall voters. Pierce didn't. He said, come on, I didn't do anything illegal. These mother effers in the Hall of Fame, some did cocaine, fucking battery. What the fuck did I do? I was just having a good time. All the people coming after me, half you mother effers do the same it. You're just hiding it. And you all are married while you're doing it. I'm divorced. I'm retired. I'm having fun. Go ahead, Paul Pierce, man. Paul Pierce done moved to my top 10. Listen, says Pierce, if I did make it with this class, it would be the biggest stiff job in Hall of Fame history. Swartz suggested Pierce speak to Jerry Colangelo, the longtime NBA and USA basketball exec who doubled as Hall chairman. Pierce agreed. In May, Pierce was in Springfield for former teammate Kevin Garnett's induction. At a dinner, he approached Colangelo. Pierce repeated he didn't think he did anything wrong. What happened has nothing to do with what I did on the court, says Pierce. Colangelo shrugged. I just told him to clear up the circumstances. You may want to come out and say something, says Colangelo. Don't leave any doubt in anyone's mind who knows how people are going to be affected by what they saw. I told him he ought to think about apologizing, that's all, and he chose not to, and that's fine. Days later, the Hall made it official. Pierce was in. That had never been a dream, said Pierce. It's hard to be a kid and say, I want to make the Hall of Fame. He says, I think all the players who make it play like they are going to go out and go as hard as they can. And the results at the end of the day, that's what your career is. Still, there's no doubt Pierce relishes the honor because many NBA teams, 9 if we're being specific, passed on the chance to pick a Hall of Famer. So, let's see. Okay, Rick Pitino was panicking when he remembers it was June 98, and Pitino, the Celtics coach and president of basketball operations, was huddled in Boston's draft room. A month earlier, Pitino was vacationing in Europe. Boston assistant general manager Chris Wallace called. Wallace had become enthralled with the 6'11 German forward he had first seen at the Nike Hoop Summit. The player, Dirk Nowitzki, was available for a workout. Wallace asked whether Pitino could get to Rome to go and see him. In Rome, Pitino watched the gangly 19-year-old bang in threes like a guard. He was blown away, recalls Pitino. At lunch, Pitino told Nowitzki, skip the draft combine, I'll take you at number 10. Nowitzki asked Pitino how he could trust him. Pitino got Red Auerbach, the Celtics vice chairman, on the phone, and according to Pitino, Nowitzki was sold. I went home, says Pitino, thinking we had our guy. On draft night, Pitino was relaxed. Michael Olowokandi went number 1 to the Clippers, then Mike Bibby, then Ralph LaFrance, Antoine Jameson, Vince Carter. At 6, Dallas took Robert Traylor. Wallace excelled. He knew the Mavs like Nowitzki. Dallas assistant general manager Donnie Nelson had a reputation for mining top international prospects. Wallace had Nowitzki in his sights until Milwaukee grabbed him at number 9, immediately flipping him to Dallas and swapped for Traylor. Pitino mumbled to himself, they got him. From there, says Pitino, we were scurrying. It wasn't that they didn't know much about Pierce. They didn't know anything. Why would they? Every projection had Pierce off the board inside the first few picks. I hadn't done my homework on Paul at all, says Pitino in the room. Wallace was reassuring. Rick got a little nervous, says Wallace. He wanted to know what everybody knew that we didn't. And I just said, well, if he's there, just don't worry about it. We know or don't know. Let's just take him. And they did. 10. Pierce didn't think he slipped out of the top 5. He worked out once for the Clippers. He wasn't surprised when they passed. I wanted to work out for them again, said Pierce. They didn't. He thought the Grizzlies, sitting at number 2, were interested. That was until from his seat in the green room, Vancouver, he watched as David Falk, agent for Bibby, ducked into a meeting with Grizzlies GM Stu Jackson. When a pair of wing players, Jameson and Carter, came off the board, Pierce's heart sank. I was dizzy, says Pierce. Finally, at 10, Pierce heard his name. Boston. Pierce thought to himself, how the hell did that happen? Pierce's career can be broken up into a series of moments. The draft was won. In 97, Pierce considering declaring after a strong sophomore season at Kansas. He asked Jayhawks coach Roy Williams to look into his draft range. Williams came back with anywhere from 6 to 16. Pierce decided to stay unfinished business, says Pierce. I wanted to win the national title, and I wanted to be the number 1 pick. Kansas didn't win the title. The Jayhawks were upset in the second round of the NCAA tournament, but Pierce was brilliant. He was a first-team All-American. He was the MVP of the Big 12 tournament, says Williams. In every way, he was fantastic. Reason for Pierce's slide remains something of a mystery. I think some people looked at Paul and wondered if he was athletic enough. I think there were questions about whether he could score in the NBA like he did in college. Pierce, officially listed at 235 pounds, was not a physical specimen. In 99, Doc Rivers was coaching in Orlando. Rivers recalled a regular season game against Boston where Pierce went on a scoring binge in the first half. At halftime, Rivers tore into his team. I said, how is a fat, unathletic guy effing killing us? But then you realize he wasn't fat at all. He was in great shape. He was super athletic, but he was so fundamentally sound that you often missed his athleticism. The draft slight fueled Pierce. Pitino asked Pierce whether he wanted to be in Boston. Pitino says Pierce had a possible trade cooking with Houston and asked Pierce whether he wanted to be sent there. Pierce responded, "Don't trade me anywhere." He knew a little about Boston. His close friend Chauncey Billups spent half his rookie year playing for Pitino the previous season. Billups told Pierce that in training camp everyone was on IVs. All I was thinking, said Pierce, is that I have to be in the best shape of my life. The NBA lockout afforded Pierce an extra few months conditioning. When he arrived, teammates observed a player with an edge. He had a killer mentality, says Antoine Walker. Pierce teammate for 5 years. He was confident, cocky, really. You could see he wanted to be great. He played like it. Pierce averaged 17 points per game his first year. He finished third in Rookie of the Year voting. Each night he checked on the players picked before him. Matchups with Toronto, Philly, and Milwaukee were opportunities to take out his frustration. It pushed me into another gear, said Pierce. I played meaner. It motivated me every day, every effing day. So the date is burnt in his memory. September 25th, 2000, the Buzz Club, a dimly lit nightclub in downtown Boston. Pierce Celtic teammate Tony Battie and Battie's brother Derek alongside him. These are the things Pierce remembers. Other details are blurry. At a pool table, Pierce paused to talk to two women. A man approached. "That's my sister." The man says, "No disrespect." Pierce responded suddenly. A champagne bottle crashed against the side of his head. A group of men enveloped him. Some hit him with fists, others slashed him with knives. He was stabbed 5 times between his shoulder blades. He took 3 slashes across his stomach, with one cutting into his diaphragm, puncturing a lung, and slipping within a half inch of his heart. Security eventually pulled Pierce into a stairwell. The Batties rushed him to Tufts New England Medical Center. In the emergency room, Pierce asked, "Am I going to live?" Pierce speaks about the incident with striking ease. The knife wounds miraculously missed his organs. The pain was debilitating. For days, Pierce slept on his left side. The wounds to his right side, stomach, and back making it too difficult to sleep any other way. When he did roll over, he hammered his morphine drip until he passed out. Anger consumed him. He considered revenge. "I was just like, man, I'll kill somebody," says Pierce. Pierce needed a place to channel his rage. Basketball, once his passion, became his outlet. He talked to his mother, Lorraine, who raised him in Inglewood, California. After Pierce's father, George, took off when Pierce was 6, that was about it. "I really isolated myself," says Pierce. "I didn't talk to friends, family. All I thought about was basketball." His body astonishingly recovered in time for Pierce to report for the final days of Boston's training camp in early October. He wore a padded vest under his jersey to protect the still healing knife wounds. He played in the season opener, scored 28 points. He played in the next 81 games as well. Pitino pleaded with Pierce not to take charges. Pierce said that wasn't how he was built. "I just wanted the ball," said Pierce. "I wanted to take my anger out on everyone. I wanted to bust everyone's ass who stepped in front of me." Pierce believed he did enough to make the All-Star team that year. When he didn't, he flew to Los Angeles, only he didn't go home. He checked into a hotel and fumed. He watched the game wondering how Allen Houston had made the team over him. "I was so pissed off," said Pierce, "I swore I would make it next year." The 2002 All-Star game was played at the First Union Center in Philly. Sure enough, Pierce was in it, the first of 10 appearances. It's an iconic photo, one that hangs on the walls of TD Garden. Pierce, a Finals MVP trophy in his right hand, left fist clenched, head titled back, unleashing a euphoric scream. Boston's 17th championship was Pierce's first, a wire-to-wire dominant 07-08 season that culminated with the Game 6 drubbing of the Lakers. For Pierce, it was a crowning achievement. When he sees the photo now, though he's reminded of how close he came to not getting there. By '07, Pierce was adrift. In '02, Boston, backstopped by Pierce and Walker, advanced to the conference finals. A year later, the team was eliminated in the second round, but Pierce believed the Celtics were a piece away from contention. Danny Ainge disagreed. The former Celtics guard had been hired to run basketball operations in May '03. 7 months later, Walker was gone, offloaded to Dallas. Soon after, Jim O'Brien, the longtime Pitino lieutenant who stabilized the franchise after Pitino quit in '01, resigned as coach. That was Danny's cleaning house, says Pierce. I thought I was next. Ainge didn't see it that way. Paul was the only untouchable guy on that team, he says. The team just wasn't good enough. In '04, Ainge hired Rivers as coach. He and Pierce immediately clashed. People wouldn't believe how often they argued, says Pierce. He recalls countless meetings with Rivers and Ainge that led to heated arguments about his shot selection. They were always telling me how to play, says Pierce. They wanted me to pass the ball more. Well, who did they want me to pass it to? Jerry Welsh? Shit. I'd rather take a bad shot than pass it to Jerry Welsh. Welsh spent 55 unremarkable games in Boston before being flipped for a first-round pick, and he was out of the league a year later. Rivers refused to budge, though he understood Pierce's frustration. Paul, he had that shot with Antoine, says Rivers. And then when I got there, Danny and I were talking about a rebuild, so Paul is thinking, what the F? By the end of '06-07 season, Pierce had enough. His relationship with Rivers had improved. The Celtics had not. In '05-06, Pierce averaged 27 points per game. Boston finished the season 33-49. The next year, they won just 24. Pierce wanted out. Boston shopped him to Portland. Pierce killed that. Too dysfunctional, says Pierce. In spring '07, Pierce ran into Mavericks owner Mark Cuban in Las Vegas. Pierce told Cuban, I'm your missing piece. Pierce pushed Schwartz to attempt to engineer a trade to Dallas. I'm in my prime and I'm watching all these other guys in the playoffs, says Pierce. It was depression. I thought I was out of there. I thought it was over. Ainge had other ideas. In the summer of '07, Ainge put together deals to acquire Garnett from the Timberwolves for a package anchored by Al Jefferson and 2 future first-rounders, and Ray Allen from the Seattle Supersonics for a first-round pick and 3 players. Suddenly, Pierce was on a title contender, and the fire he played with as a rookie returned. He was a monster that training camp, says then Celtics forward Brian Scalabrine. He leveled up 5 notches. Boston sprinted out to a 30-4 start that season. Garnett added defensive intensity. Allen was arguably the NBA's best perimeter shooter. Rajon Rondo in his second year developed into an elite playmaker. Pierce says Rivers was the glue. Paul let Kevin be the leader, says Rivers. I don't think Paul gets enough credit for that. It was Paul's team. Kevin and Ray were coming in. For Paul to give up that much trust to someone else is not done very often. It also tells you how bad he wanted to win. Pierce, of course, was more than just a bystander. He averaged 20 points per game that season. He chipped in nearly 22 per game in the finals. When Boston needed a bucket, Pierce was the one who found it. He's the only player I've coached who I would ask where he wants to take a shot from, says Rivers. He could always get to his spot. When plays broke down, Pierce was even better. His ability to function in chaos was incredible, says Scalabrine. Possessions in the NBA go sideways a lot. The difference between an all-star and a Hall of Fame guy is about 2.5 plays per game. In times of chaos, Paul made those plays. Pierce isn't sure who will accompany him to his induction. Lorraine, certainly. She's 79, getting older, but would have missed this. Garnett, too. The bond between Pierce and Garnett has strengthened since their playing days ended. They live 10 minutes from each other. Their families vacation together. Their daughters, both born in the spring of '08, are best friends. Our championship baby, said Pierce. George Pierce will not. Paul doesn't know his father. He knows where he lives in Northern California. Recently, he connected with his half-brother Billy on social media. We keep an open dialogue, says Pierce. He hoped George would reach out after the stabbing, but of all the calls, faxes, and emails he received, none of them came from his father. I know, says Pierce. I looked through everyone after not hearing from him after the title. Pierce says he let it go, but he still wonders why. I understand you didn't have to be with my mom, he says. All right, whatever. But you know I'm still your son. Why didn't you at least reach out? Ask how I'm doing. I never asked him for money. What happened? I think that's every kid whose father isn't around. What went wrong? I'm not going to judge you for that. He's older now. I mean, I don't have any hate for him. Pierce says he intends to reach out. His 4 children are getting older. They are starting to ask questions. He doesn't have answers. At Espen, he talked to Jalen Rose about Rose's father, Jimmy Walker. Walker was the number 1 pick in the 1967 draft. NBA draft. He died in '07. Rose never met him. He told Pierce he often wishes he did. When this pandemic lifts, says Pierce, I'm going to do it. After that, who knows? At 43, Pierce isn't ruling out a return to TV. It would have to be something different, says Pierce. He could get back into the NBA. Frank Vogel, the Lakers coach, offered Pierce an assistant coaching when Vogel was in Orlando a few years back. The Clippers offered Pierce a front office role after he retired. He don't want to coach, says Pierce. Too much work. Is like playing, maybe worse. My kids are still young. I don't want to miss these years. Pierce's ideas, he's collaborating with Garnett on a few. The two are planning on launching a podcast. Pierce wants to do a show that follows the two of them traveling the world, just doing all the S we couldn't do when we played. Since Pierce, for example, skydiving, says Pierce, maybe a bull run in Spain, get motorcycles and travel around, experience different cultures, different foods. That would be so much. Pierce is also launching his own brand of marijuana, Truth, a nod to the nickname Shaquille O'Neal gave him years ago. He's a partner in Selfie Pop, an online platform for social media influencers. It's Cameo meets Linktree, he says. He says he's clearing 7 figures from his cryptocurrency investments. There's something else. Back in '07, Rivers got Pierce, Garnett, and Allen on a duck boat. Garnett asked, how many titles do you think we could get out of this? Rivers' response, at least 2, but they didn't. In '12, Allen signed with Miami, Boston's rival in the East. Pierce was furious. He took less money too, says Pierce. The two have buried the hatchet, hashing it out on an exhibition tour of China several years ago, but the rest of the team hasn't. Pierce believes Garnett is softening. KG, he's less stubborn as he gets older, he says. Rondo, that's a problem, says Pierce. Rondo, he's still stubborn. Pierce still envisions the moment he's seen it before. Legends from Russell to Tommy Hizon to Larry Bird recognized by a Boston crowd. He sees the game maybe a season opener at which the starting 5, Pierce, Garnett, Allen, Rondo, and Perk, walk out at halftime to a deafening roar. Others have tried to reunite that group. Rivers did. I failed, he says. Pierce is determined not to. I'm going to keep talking to everyone, says Pierce. What a moment that would be. Indeed, another one in life filled with them. So that's a shout out to The Truth, man. Make sure you guys look at it. It is on the it's on Sports Illustrated. The Moment of Truths. Paul Pierce reflects on his Hall of Fame career. And Paul Pierce was a great player. I think a lot of people don't give him a lot of love like they should because he really wasn't a flashy player. Paul Pierce was very fundamentally sound. Outside of Kobe Bryant, I say he probably was the most fundamentally sound player of the 2000s and late 90s. So I think people need to go back and do their history. To me, he's in Boston history, he's in the top 5. You got to give him that. He's a great player, great leader. The guy always got buckets when it was time to get buckets. So he was always a guy that was the underdog. That's why I appreciated him. I always appreciated Paul Pierce because he was just different. And his thing about the ESPN talking about LeBron, of course, because LeBron runs it. He runs ESPN. All of his flunkies are over there. And I agree with him. It's like, look, that's all they want to talk about is LeBronies all day. Nobody want to talk about this guy. But see, that's what they have subjected themselves to. And that's how it's always going to be. So let me know in the comment section what y'all thought about Paul Pierce, man. Shout out to The Truth getting in the Hall of Fame. He deserves it. So thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, share this. hit the notification bell to select all to receive upcoming notifications. And if you do love what you hear, you can donate to the page by Cash Apping me at the word welcome, the number 2, and an HDII TV. Thank you for listening, and we out. Deezy.